went into politics, and I'm happy we are having her now. And it's very important that when she speaks, I think the rest of the world will listen and will move forward. So with that few, since most of her profile is in the write-up, let me introduce, welcome Her Excellency Majala Mlagwi to speak to us. Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, Dr. Frank Mjenyi, for that very kind introduction and for the invitation to speak at this particular forum. And I'd also like to thank you for your patience, because I was meant to be in the first forum, but unfortunately due to political engagements, I had to cancel at the very last minute. So I'm really grateful for the indulgence to be able to participate in this second forum. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the rest of the participants. It's a pleasure being on here, especially when I'm seeing familiar names and familiar faces, to continue this conversation about how do we strengthen the artisanal small-scale mining sector in Kenya, in Uganda, in East Africa, and in the rest of Africa. Indeed, we've been having this conversation for a very long time. I ventured into the sector in around 2009, 2010. And 10 years later, if I just call it as a decade, sometimes it feels that we're either marching on the same ground, but when you sit and reflect back, you actually see some of the gains that we've made towards strengthening the sector, towards opening it up and creating more awareness, creating more linkages with stakeholders who can be some of the shoulders that we stand on in terms of finding solutions to the various challenges that have been challenging us within the artisanal small-scale mining sector. And I want to thank both the initial moderator as well as Dr. Vincent Kedi for the remarks. They're essentially everything that we need to be focusing on in terms of how do we look at some of these challenges that we've been addressing and make sure that we're actually resolving them in a shorter time frame and in a collaborative manner. Value addition, as has been mentioned, is one thing that I'd like to mention in some of the remarks that I'll make this afternoon where I am today, and also looking at how we're focusing on the issue of formalization and moving to professionalization. Over the past few years, we've been really concentrating on how do we make sure that artisanal miners across the various mineral value chains in the sector are actually being enabled to operate in a legal manner. And while the legal framework is one of the things that has been challenged, and as a government official now, I can proudly say that in Kenya, we have a progressive mining code that has actually recognized the requirement to have artisanal miners formalized with permits in a manner that will then enable them to move forward in a professional way. But aside from that, how do we make sure that we're supporting the sector more than just the formalization bit, more than just looking at the legal aspect and then empowering the groups of people who are working with the various minerals that we've talked about. My topic for today is focusing on jewelry. And when we look at jewelry, then that means that I'm limited to some of the more high value and some of the lower value. As Dr. Frank said, I don't like calling them low value minerals. Development minerals is something that I prefer. But when we're looking at specifically the jewelry sector, we're looking at gold, we're looking at silver, we're looking at essentially the metals that will go towards creation of jewelry. And we're also looking at the gemstones from the high value, that's the emeralds, the diamonds, even to savorites, to the green garnets, to red garnets, and the lower value ones, such as tourmaline, for example, which is very abundant in Kenya, as well as the lower value stones such as amethyst and I could ramble on the names of gemstones, so not to stick on that point. These are minerals that are essentially mined by about 80% of artisanal miners in the continent. Initially, our moderator talked about up to 40% of minerals being produced by the ASM sector. But when you specifically look at the jewelry sector and the minerals that contribute to that particular subsector, then we're looking up to 80% of ASMs. And for the point of how do we start unlocking that value, we need to look at more than just formalization. We need to look at more than just the professionalization. How do we start shifting our mindsets from the production area? And as has been mentioned at the beginning of this forum, how do we start looking at the value addition? How do we look at the end products that we're keen to have developed from the gemstones, from the gold and the various metals that go into the jewelry sector? And one of the things that I have been giving a lot of thought on is value addition can only be done where there is skill and technology present. Value addition can only be done where you have a subset of people who understand how to add value to the various minerals that we're talking about. So if it is gemstones, do they understand how to process them once they're out of the mine? Do they understand them? Do they understand how to value the low value versus the high value of the various stones? Do they understand what is the best way of cutting the stones? Because with some gemstones is one way that you'd cut them that will receive greater value than in another way. Do we understand how we can then put them into the end product? Do we want these to be going into fashionable jewelry? Do we want this to be going into mass jewelry? Do we want this to be going into luxury jewelry, for example? And all of those require various skill sets that we as a continent are still very undercapacitated for. It's unfortunate that I have to say this, but it's a truth that we have to deal with so that we can then resolve it. Various countries in the continent have been have a history, a traditional and cultural history of jewelry. So Egypt, Ethiopia, Mali, those are the ones that I can come to the top of my head of countries that have been using high value minerals and metals to be able to create jewelry. In Kenya, we also have a cultural and traditional we have a cultural tradition of jewelry, but ours is more focused on bone, on copper, on beads, not necessarily on the gemstones. So how do we start shifting some of this usage of our end market target, our end audience, to start looking at the gemstones and the golds and the silvers that we need to be looking at? And that can only happen once we start looking at the education and skill sets that is available within the country. The other thing that we need to start focusing on as well in terms of unlocking the potential of the jewelry sector for ASM is what kind of technology are we employing, both at the production level and at the end level of creating the jewelry. Now, the reason I say production is because when we've been talking about professionalization of ASM, we mainly look at, formalization of it, we mainly look at the legal framework. And then when we're looking at professionalization of it, we're, I guess, looking at how do we get them into cooperatives? How do we get them to be able to create business models that will be financeable, that will be able to have access to proper financing? How do we enable the ASMs to be able to properly map out their mining areas? But I'm also targeting how do we equip ASM with a proper equipment to extract the minerals in a manner that then preserves the value for it by the time it's coming to a jeweler's desk. One of the complaints that we normally get with some of the savarite mines in Kenya is that some of the ways we blast our green garnet when it's still in the mine means that it is fractured too much within the mine, so that by the time it is getting to a jeweler's desk, rather than getting 10 carats or 15 carats of a beautiful stone, you have 15 carats split out into 1 carat stone each. And that's not containing or maintaining the value that we need to be able to then pump back into the ASM sector. So when we're looking at technology, how do we ensure that for each mineral that is an input into the jewelry sector, we're actually employing the proper mining techniques that will then maintain that value once it gets into the marketplace? And then once it gets into the marketplace, how do we then ensure that we have skilled enough people? And this is where the job creation and income generation that the moderator was talking about earlier on comes into play. How do we have enough rafts of people who have the knowledge to be able to process the gemstones that are now in front of them? I'll give an example of Sri Lanka in, I believe, Colombo. In a small little area, they have more than 2,000 gemstone cutters. And these are people who've been cutting stones. The knowledge has been passed on from mostly son to son to son. I'm hoping now there's daughter to daughter to daughter. Being a woman, we always have to advocate for increased gender participation. But in that particular small city, you have about 2,000 gemstone cutters. If I was to replicate that in some of the cities in Kenya or Tanzania or even Malawi and Zambia, it's practically impossible to find 2,000 cutters concentrated in one little city. So that in itself shows us there's a gap in terms of our attention and our investment, both as a private sector and as government, to ensuring that that particular area of the value chain is empowered enough to then add value to the ASM down the line at the production level. If I take myself out of the jewelry sector for a minute and just look at how we still need to unlock the value of ASM in terms of making sure that the production that they're working towards is actually gaining that $1 a day or even $1,000 a day, I believe we need to start looking at more sectoral linkages, explore the conversations about what private sector and government needs to be doing in terms of the various sectors that link towards the production capacity of ASM. Within the African mining vision, there's a very strong pillar that talks about how ASM needs to link into the various industrial sectors. And if we're looking at Kenya, for example, we have an agenda called the Big Four agenda, that is the president's legacy of how we will not only improve agricultural and health outcomes in the country, but also how we would look at industrialization. And I've been looking at it with the lens of how do we apply our mineral products from ASM into that agenda. And most of that then links up again to making sure that we have proper linkages. As has been said previously, there's the up to 40% of production from ASM minerals. And these can be linked up to the agricultural sector in terms of agricultural inputs, fertilizer, for example. It can be linked up to the construction sector when we're looking at development minerals, that is the building blocks, sand, and other more construction minerals. That can also be linked up to industrial inputs, such as when we're looking at steel manufacturing and the inputs that come in from iron ore, for example. And then within the jewelry sector, or rather the gemstone sector, if we're looking at it from an industrial perspective, it's not just about the jewelry making. It is also about the arts and crafts. So in Kenya, again, if I look at that as a specific example, we're looking at seeing how do we then use the lower value minerals, the ones that cannot be cut and put into the gemstones, the ones that cannot be utilized as, you know, pretty things on your desk, but actually crushed and then used as fancy powder for paintings. This is happening in Vietnam, and they have managed to create a fantastic industry and value for both the artisanal miners and the youth and women, and I believe some old men as well, in case I need to be PC here, in being able to generate that income and be able to generate the jobs from the sector. We're also looking at how do we then also increase some of the beneficiation of the gemstones to then link up with our curio sector. We have a very strong curio sector of beautiful, we call them, in Kitaita, we call them vidasi, or in Kiswahili, it's vikapu, and it's essentially a basket that is woven by women in the village. How do we link some of these things up with gemstones that have been marginally value added so that that then links up those two sectors to open up a niche market at the end in Europe, in America, in Asia even, because this is where most of the populations who can afford some of these things exist. And the reason that we have to start thinking about some of this out of the box ideas is because they're already being thought about by the Gucci's and Louis Vuittons and Pradas. These are companies and designers who are manufacturing bags and selling them for about $4,000 a pop. And these are very similar to what we could make here. So I believe that a very strong avenue of unlocking the value for the ASM and then eventually the whole value chain is ensuring that we're looking at the end market and working backwards. We've already been walking those steps forward towards formalization and professionalization. So how do we now walk backwards to then meet up with the ASM who are now formalized and able to produce ethical, environmentally responsibly mined gemstones and metals for the sector. As I finish off, I think one of the very main things that we also need to look at is our education sector in regards to the mining and ASM population. We need to look at how we are simplifying mining technology and giving it as curriculums to our ASM operators. We need to look at how we are simplifying the geological information and providing it to the ASM operators, remembering that most of them, for the most part, not necessarily educated to the level of college or even high school at some levels. So how do we start looking at this as a technical skill, a vocational skill, simplifying it and including it in a package that can then be delivered to them as they're looking at opening up their production. Of course, then this will then link up to the gemological and jewelry making skills. How do we make sure that these skills are embedded within our education curriculums? If I look at a country like Australia, they have curriculums that are put together with the chambers of mines and with the ministries of mines, with the government ministries responsible for looking at mineral sector development. And they're putting up content that can be taught to children all the way from grade 5 up to university level. How we, for lack of a better phrase, how we not reinventing the wheel and actually looking at that from a point of view of capacity building our youth so that they're able to provide that skill base that is required to have that value addition knowledge and contextual knowledge of how to best exploit our minerals from our continent. How do we make sure that from the vocational training angle, that we are actually concentrating on skills that will then enable us to strengthen this sector. At the moment, for example, in my county, we have 28 vocational training centers, and all of them have 5 key courses that are taught. Hospitality, because we have a lot of tourism, catering, which goes hand in hand with the hospitality, hairdressing, tailoring, construction, and automotive mechanics that is done in there. But we've been pushing the conversation within our county government, and of course this now filters out to the Ministry of Education, in how do we start embedding some of these key critical skills that will get us to the vision that we're all working towards for the ASM sector. How do we start making sure that someone can come out of vocational training center with a certification on gemstone value addition, on valuation rather? How do we come out with people coming out with skills on gold refining? What is the best way to do this, in addition to not looking at it from the environmental perspective, because our focus has been how do we eliminate mercury use in the gold refining, but now looking at it for how do we set up someone who has the skills to create, for example, a small to medium enterprise that provides gold to jewelers in the market. How do we make sure that people have that technical capability to then be employed within the market? How do we make sure that someone understands how to tumble the low value gemstones so that they can then be a mass production enterprise for the little curio craft enterprises of women that exist? So there's multiple opportunities that are low risk in terms of the type of investment that is required, both from the government perspective and the private sector perspective, that then enable us to start de-risking, as Dr. Frank had talked about, the ASM production chain that is so necessary to get it to a point of stability and professionalism. One of the main things that I'm sure all of us on this call will have heard from most ASM miners is we need market, we need money. Now, if we're looking at it from this other angle of the end consumers of technology and of education, then we start opening up avenues of taking the market to the ASM and the money, the financing to the ASM, because there's a stable value chain that exists with key players being able to profit and benefit from this whole chain. Finally, I always like ending my presentations with an invitation to our county. As I said, as I was introduced, I'm from Taita Taveta County, which is from one of the 47 counties in Kenya. And we're also the home of the Savarite gemstone, green garnet, that is essentially comparable to emerald. And we, together with the national government, have come into partnership to create a gemstone value addition center within the county that is to be launched hopefully in the few coming months, that is targeting being able to bring in buyers, but also raise awareness about some of these issues that I've just talked about, the technology aspect, the education aspect, and increasing the market for the ASM sector, especially the gemstone sector in the county. On the 30th of November to the 4th of December, we are actually holding a Savarite Week, which will be both virtual and in physical location. Within this corona times, we have to balance all of this within the county, and we're hosting this with Association of Women in Energy and Extractives in Kenya, together with the Ministry of Petroleum and Mining of Kenya and the county government of Taita Taveta, to raise more awareness about Savarite, its potential, both from the products that is coming out and the investment that is possible within this particular sector. So I welcome you all to the county to see what it is that we can do, working together to enable the ASM sector, not only the jewelry sector, but also in the other development minerals that are so key in building our economies across the continent. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mlagui. Yes, thank you very much, Honorable Mlagui. It's heartwarming to hear that Kenya has a progressive mining code that has recognized the ASM. And I'm also happy to hear that comment that we need to look at the end market and work backward to produce ethical gemstones. Thank you so much. We don't want to run short of time. So in a moment, I would hand over to Frank to bring in the next speaker. But then a few comments are coming from Dean Richardson, who is happy and saying that skill and technology, ain't that the truth? He talks about how he does his work in Australia and also that we can do same in Africa. Thank you very much. I also recognize the presence of Patrick Odiegu. I hope I mentioned the name well. We are happy you are on board. I'm also happy to see Dr. Chumesi, Dr. Ekuya Chumesi of the Ghana Petroleum Commission, actually a consultant to the Ghana Petroleum Commission and an expert on local content. Thank you all for joining. As time goes on, we'll be doing more of this recognition. Over to you, Mr. Chair, Dr. Frank Mujeni.
Thank you so much. And I was very happy to see Excellency Mlagui, Majara Mlagui. And I liked the way you went on that beach. The background was, it actually refreshed me from the 9th floor of the AU building where I'm sitting from. Seeing you on that beach in the background. Thank you so much. But let me, before I bring in Dr. Asfo, let me get some takeaways from you. You alluded to the fact that in terms of formalization and professionalization, we are focused on artisan and small-scale mining, focusing on finance, technology, and so forth. But we have forgotten on some other areas in terms of creating more skill into producing, high-quality products. But also on that, you also alluded to the fact that having a high quality product would require that you also have good technology for extraction so that you don't destroy the quality. In fact, any starting point of any value chain for you to get a high quality product, be it in coffee, cotton, cocoa, everything is, hides and schemes, is on how you harness the raw material. If the raw material is damaged, you definitely are sure to get a damaged end product. You can never get high quality product if you have a damaged hide and skin, if you have not post-harvesting, poor handling of cotton or cocoa or coffee or anything of that sort, you're not going to get a high quality product at the end. And this goes same thing with the artisanal small scale mining, especially that we're moving into value addition. We also stressed the issue of value addition to ensure that we have, create jobs for, and on this one, you also related it with the cluster formation, the cluster of 2,000 women you mentioned either in Malaysia. That is a very important thing. We need to look at that. How do we form clusters in Africa? Because you cannot have artisanal small scale mining or operating individually and you think you are going to get there. It won't happen. In terms, if they're going to access quality technology, quality training, working together, and you have mentioned about that valorization. I mean, those vocational training centers in Kenya, I was going to come to that. This is very important. That if you're going to have, it's easier to have 2,000 women or 200 women or men and women or young people in the same training hall. You train them, you make them understand in terms of quality training, and they move on. It's not easy to get. So cluster formation is going to be very important for us. In fact, there is no, when you look at ICT and Silicon Valley, it is all based on cluster formation. So we need to explore, starting with the East African region, how do we create clusters for these people? It doesn't have to be in Uganda. And I'm going to come to their conclusion, the point that you concluded on, which should be a recommendation, that the centers you're opening up in Taita Taveta, why can't it be a regional center? Why should it be a Taita county center? Why shouldn't we make it a regional center? We get young women coming from Uganda, Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, wherever. They come in, they train, they cut, they get skills. If they want to move back, they can move back into their countries. If they want to stay and move and work there. People who formed the Silicon Valley cluster in the US were not Americans, they were Asians. They were from other regions of the world, but they went in and created those industries within the Silicon Valley cluster. So we need to look at the cluster. Finally, which we want to look at as a recommendation from your presentation, is how do we work together? And I was looking at triple helix because we need to bring in the triple helix would mean bringing in the government, the private sector, and the academia. But I would just say that the government will have to work with, in Africa, it requires non-state actors. So I would say I'll keep it as triple helix, but I'll keep it as government and non-government actors, private sector, which is mainly the artisanal and people want to move into the private sector, and then the academia. The academia would of course include the vocational training institutions, other private, we're actually thinking of having centers of excellence and training hubs and so forth. All these need to come together and find a solution to really move this forward. We are tired of talking and ending there. MADI is going to move forward and look for real action. We don't want to remain in action on talk on, or no action talk only. I always say Africa, we like no action talk only. We want to make action. So I'll take upon you and the speakers here that we need to look at the action that we are going to take based on what you have submitted. And thank you so much, Your Excellency, for that submission. I now have the pleasure to now introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mani Asfo. Dr. Mani, I've also known her since I think 2009 as I was working in COMESA. She's been vice and chair of the COMESA Business Council. She's the president of the African Alliance for Women Empowerment, BPW International. She is also the chairperson of the Human Resources, Science and Technology Cluster of the African Union, ECOSOC. She is the member of the Council of AU Foundation. The AU Foundation is another African Union private sector arm that is mandated to mobilize in the private sector. So Madame Asfo wears a lot of hats, But what is very important, Madam Asfo, if you want any decision to reach the policy organ of the African Union, yes, I'm there as a technical person, but Madam Asfo will take that voice and it will reach any member of the African Union the Commission at the presidential level. So I'm happy to welcome Madam Dr. Asfo to give us your presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, my brother Frank. Thanks a lot. And thank you for this very, very important panel, because I believe this sector is really have very high potential, but actually, unfortunately, very low recognition with reference to many of the policy organs. I also like to thank Honorable my sister Malagwi. She really summarized it all. That even when in my talk there is a lot of duplication of what she already mentioned, because she really had a very comprehensive presentation. Thank you very much for it. First, thank you also my brother Frank for mentioning the Africa Business Council, which I believe, thank God I was elected among my colleagues private sector to be the first interim chairperson for the Africa Business Council, which will be the organized private sector with the voice of the private sector among the whole continent. So one of the issues really I am looking forward to achieve is to have a technical committee with reference to the mining development sector, because this is a huge potential for Africa. So I will really need all your expertise or your great ideas to see how we move forward within this sector. And as my brother Frank said, to raise it to the African leaders, to the heads of states, what we need. Having said that, what we really need, what are the challenges, and how can we really raise amplify our voices? I have comprised the whole challenges with reference to the mining sector, or even at any sector with reference, I call them the 10 Ps, which is really about the policies. How to have the policies with incentives for our mining sector, for the women, for the youth, for the SMEs. If we really want to formalize them, we need really a great policies with reference to public procurement, which is one of the advocacy pillars we are working for, to have a certain percentage for all of all public procurement goes to SMEs. And thanks to Kenya, His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta have already, I addressed them during the Commercial Business Council heads of states and summits, and now it's implemented in Kenya that 30% of all government procurement goes to SMEs, women, youth, and people with disabilities. So policies are very important. And within these policies also we need financial inclusion, because it's very important really for our SMEs, women and youth, to have financial inclusion and have access to all the credit. So this is policies. Number two is the proper information, the proper tools, the proper education. How can we really raise awareness among all the sectors with reference to the policies, with reference to the opportunities, with reference to all the information. The third actually P, which is partnerships, because we need really those SMEs, women and youth, to have partnerships with other private sector, with public sector, to engage them with partnership across the continent. And that will be the role of one of the role will be for the technical committee, or for the mining sector, or for MADI, is to bring us together as private sector within the whole continent, to partner together, to see how we make joint ventures, to make how we make development. And the fifth P is the product development. We need value addition, we need packaging, we need designing, we need extractive, we need all the issue with reference processing. So product development is very important in all sectors that we have been talking about with reference to mining. We need how to make this product development. The 6P is really about presentation, or the whole issue is really about how we have the presentation of our products. You can see the same product in Africa if it is in Europe, with all this packaging, with all the presentation around it. It makes, with all the marketing tools, it makes a huge difference. The seventh issue is really about popularity, or advertising, or marketing. This is a big obstacle for all our women and SMEs. we don't have marketing channels. This is very important. And that's why one of the issues that MADI, I believe, Dr. Frank, that we were working with MADI, with all the other institutes to make marketing for all the SMEs, the women and youth. And through this marketing, we can have it on digital economy. One of the issues also we're working now, because this is about now the e-commerce, the Africa continental Africa platform, digital platform, Sukuku Africa, and Sukuku is a market, central market in Swahili. So how can we have all those gemstones, all those women put their products on this market, which is Sukuku Africa. Sukuku Africa will be like our Amazon or Alibaba. It was recently launched by the heads of states. It will be the digital economy arm of the Continental Free Trade Area. So I would, from this MADI conference, I'm inviting all of you to see how we register on this platform, so we have visibility across the whole over the continent and above. Also the issue of posting or shipping for our products, how we can have with all the infrastructure and transport, how we have also the perspectives. And my sister, Honorable Malagi, has really touched on this with reference to the customs, the culture, the mindset, how we change the mindset with reference to a real market that it is very open to the world, and making sure that we change the mindset, we change the culture. So with those 10 P's of the whole challenges, I am looking for a strategy which I call it economic empowerment for SMEs, women and youth, with reference not only the mining sector, but for the whole. It's based on the 3 pillars or 3 P's. First, the personal empowerment programs. P, personal empowerment programs is about the people, it's about the private sector, how we educate them, how we build their capacity, how we train them, how we to educate them how to use with the scientific and technological methods. The second P is the policy, which is we as advocates, how can we advocate for policies that will empower our SMEs to formalize and not to be, and to give them incentives. And the third P is the product development based on innovation, based on scientific institution, based on a real, if we're talking about gemstone, how we can have this gemstone fashionable or as a whole can be used by, as my sister Malagi said, with Louis Vuitton or Escada or Christian Dior, how we really, they have this product development to be standard, to be up to the whole, to the standard of the international standard. So the solutions, because I always also stress on how we can have these solutions with reference to this. And I think the solution have been said by all of you, but I also make them into, I call them the 10C, which is capacity building through business development centers, business incubators, training centers that has the whole ability to train our women. The second issue is capital access and financial inclusion. Now there is a big campaigns across all Africa to have financial inclusion. President Ramaphosa of South Africa, with the current chair of African Union, he declared that this year, 2020, is the start of African Women Decade for Financial Inclusion, which is really about having financial products for our women across the whole continent in order to perform and to have access to credit. The issue, the fifth issue is really about how we have, as you always said, cluster formation, and we have those clusters. If we are having digital economy or a platform, we will have clustering of all the sectors that we can do. And we have second, the issue, another C is certificates and standardization. How can we have certificates that is linked with centers of excellences, with universities, with academia, in order to make sure that the product coming is up to the standard and have certification. The conducive environment, of course, is very important. And this is a really a whole holistic approach, because conducive environment is really about how the government will give the policies, how the private sector or the women, the small scale miners, having a conducive environment within their mining industry, how they have a conducive environment with reference to marketing their products, and how for them the 6C, I call it the creating the markets. Creating the markets is really about how we open new channels for different markets in the world, how we have our, as my sister said, cutting the stones within our continent and not sending them to Antwerp or Amsterdam to be cut there. It's about our conducive environment to process and cut our stones within our continent. The eighth thing was really about C, also this 8C, because they are all start with C, the cooperatives versus corporates. Because we need to have cooperatives with reference to having all our women coming together, our SMEs, our youth, but also how to leverage and upscale these corporates to be cooperatives, to be corporates, to be big companies, and not only the multinational companies can come all the time and exploit our resources, exploit our minerals. We need to have these solutions that come together, and this 9 is collaboration and coordination. For all of us, how can we really have this together, and also curriculum updated? So those also 10C comes together to see how we have the solutions for the mining sector and how to use the existing machineries, because, and you have now the Africa Business Council, and we have the REX Business Council, the COMESA Business Council, the East Africa Business Council, the ECOWAS Business Council, the SADC Business Council, but we need to link those business councils to the relevance and the needs of us, all the mining sector, for women, for youth, and for SMEs. It's also very important to have a mapping exercise on the existing resources within the continent, because maybe I don't know what's happening in Kenya, I don't know what's happening in Djibouti, in Nigeria, in Senegal, in Zambia, Zimbabwe. We need to have a mining sector development directory, that we have the existing resources on the continent, the centers of excellence that is present, and how we can add value to it. I am sure that all of us here, every one of us has an expertise in certain things, but if we get a pool of experts to coming together, and I think MADI will be a great machinery for doing this, to see what is existing what are the minerals present, where are the centers of excellence, how can we train? And I think there is a project that we're working together with the African Alliance for Women Empowerment and MADI to set up centers of training in order to cut the stones, not even cutting it as Amsterdam, but to promote the original stones as it is, and put it as jewelry and promote it and market in the international market. I just want to end my thing with reference to a practical example. You know, it's a story that I always say, maybe some of you have heard it again, but as somebody here from Dubai, I was in Dubai, I saw a lovely table coming from made in Italy, but from malachite, and we know malachite comes from Africa. So, but the was made in Italy with a foot which is gold plated. I asked about the price. I don't know if you can just think a price. Can you guess how much it was? The malachite was 1.5 meter in diameter. So it's a huge piece of malachite. Can somebody say how much, if it is a 1.5 meter diameter? Okay. Just think it, I found the price because it was made in Italy by $300,000. One table, $300,000 of malachite that is present in our markets, in the central market. It is present in Tanzania, in DRC. So at one of my visits to DRC during COMESA Summit, I bought a huge, big malachite, which is 2 meters, but I didn't than $4,000 house, which has value add. It is now a piece of malachite. Hello? Hello?
Your network was unstable. Please repeat that part of how much you bought that malachite piece in DRC and what you made out of it, because that part didn't come up, please.
Okay, my brother. So I bought it from DRC by $3,000. Okay, I came back to Egypt. That's how I say we can do joint venture. You can see the golden share here in behind me. This, we are very skillful in Egypt to have this golden furniture that is very old. So I put the piece of malachite on this very nice gold chair. Now it sits on my salon, on my living room. It has only costed me about $5,000, while if I have got it from Italy or from, which is made in Italy in Dubai, it cost about $300,000. So you can see how it is very important. That is why also last time I went, I bought this one. You know, this is, you can see it everywhere in the central markets, everywhere in Africa. I bought it, I will make it a nice table that is present in the Hermitage. Anybody of you have been to St. Petersburg in Russia, in the Hermitage? They have the same one like this on a golden chair like this. And it is priceless. It's very, very, very high value. So you can see if we put our hands together, get the raw materials, make it in Africa, built in Africa, marketed in Africa, by our coming together, we will have the most rich mining sector that is already developed. I am so happy we are here together and see how we can put our hands together through MADI. Thank you, MADI, for this conference. And I will be happy through the Africa Business Council to have a technical committee for the expertise and this very great pool of mining sector development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Armanias, for, I don't know how to really summarize, but you'll share with us with that presentation. We need to document those 10 P's and 10 C's. Very nice, because they will form part of our curriculum for training. I think it's very important. They are very, very, very critical. Thank you so much. And you end by giving us an example, looking at using, because that is traditional knowledge. And you mentioned about how to craft this diamond, these resources, cut them, not the way they, the modern cutting, but in the traditional sense, because we had a traditional way of having those stones cut, and because we had the knowledge. I always tell people that, Mansa Musa, when he went to a pilgrimage in Mecca, he carried gold in bars, not in dust. So this gold jewelry have been there. And I have discussed with you at one point about how do we establish this gold souk or something, but I'm now happy to hear that there is an African sukuku. For those colleagues who want to know about the African sukuku, this is going to be the African Alibaba. To those who are used to Alibaba, it's going to be an own platform. It's coming on, it's part of the African Continental Free Trade Area, and it is only going to be selling online African-made goods. It's only made in Africa that will be selling there. The knowledge is going to be African. The product is going to be African. So we want originality. We can pick and copy and whatever, but we want to transform it into an originality. I want to thank you so much for this presentation. You are still, you are also a member of our board, and we always like your guidance. But I think, like you have ended, we'll set up hubs, training centers, building capacity. We want solutions now. We want to take the sector to the second level. So I want to thank you so much. And with that, and obviously, I was going to answer you, but I would have been cheating because I already know the answer for when you asked how much it would be. So I let other people discuss. For those of you who don't know Maracay, please Google and find out what it is, because this is something that you find in markets. If you go to Kinshasa, you'll find it in the mineral sockets market. If you go to places where Tanzania, but we have not attached value to it ourselves. Now we have traditional value that we need to really, traditional knowledge. When you go to Marrakesh in Morocco, you'll see those tools are made out of Moroccan style way of doing leather, and people go in just buy that. So we'll have a market where people will be coming to see that this thing can only be obtained in Africa, not anywhere in the world, but only in Africa. And for that matter, I want to start with East Africa, and for that matter, in Taita Taveta. So let me hand over to my colleague, or in Egypt also, we can have centers all over in East Africa that can promote these artisanal small-scale mining, but also with small and medium enterprises building into these knowledge high products along the value chain. So I can't repeat what you said. It's quite very important, conducive environment and so forth, but we shall do a synthesized report for our participants. And I would like now to hand over back to my co-MC, Raymond. Please take over to bring in other speakers. Thank you so much, Dr. Asfo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Dr. Frank Mujeni. And also thank you, Dr. Ashford, for that excellent presentation. Next on the agenda is Christina Villegas. Pact World has a model that moves from the mines to the market. We asked the question, how do we accelerate this model in the formalization process of the small-scale mining or artisanal small-scale mining on the continent? So Christina will be talking to us on that. Christina is the director of mining at Pact. She is recognized globally as an expert in the artisanal and small-scale mining space. She has about 15 years of experience in the international development sector. She is actually a specialist in the ASM, rural development strategies, the mineral sector, and she's worked with the UN and the USAID and even the US Department of Labor and even the World Bank. So without talking too much, may we invite our next speaker, Christina Villegas, to tell us how to include the model of Pact in this formalization process. Christina Maria Villegas, your audience around the globe, please listen to Christina. Over to you, Christina.
Thank you, everyone. I think I might have skipped Miss Amina from Ghana in the speaker order, but hopefully Amina can go after me. So yes, thank you, everyone. Jambo, Habari. I'm really delighted to be here today. Pact, you might all know about Pact. We are about 50 years old. We have offices in 40 countries around the world. We focus on health, livelihoods, natural resources management, and responsible mining. And we work with the most artisanal and small-scale miners in the world. And we're present in about 15 countries working on mining. And a lot of those are in Africa. So currently we work with about 80,000 artisanal miners in the DRC, Rwanda, Burundi, and then additional miners in Kenya, Madagascar, Tanzania, Zimbabwe. And in 2021, we will be expanding to Zambia, Mali, Ghana, and possibly Sierra Leone. So today, I'll be focusing on our formalization approaches, and then I'll be focusing on markets, because I think that's a really exciting area that we've been learning a lot about, and I wanted to share some of our lessons. So first, I'll talk about formalization. Generally, formalization is defined as the process of legalization and regulatory attainment. The goal is to facilitate organized mineral markets that allow all scales of mining to thrive based on their individual human and financial resources, recognizing that larger scale mining have completely different budgets and technical capacity than artisanal and small scale miners. But as my colleagues here have mentioned, artisanal and small scale mining, ASM, are the workforce of mining. 80 to 90% of all mine labor in the world is ASM. So when we think about mining, we should think about ASM, especially in the African context. So for PACT, we often think about formalization of mining and trading. I think most discussions of formalization to date have really been focused on formalization of mining. But if you formalize the mines, who are they going to sell to? You need to make sure that transaction is also formalized. So we build formalization approaches based on what is currently happening in a place and a trading ecosystem. So we ask the following questions. Where are the minerals flowing and why? There's a reason for that. Why are people choosing to be formal? Why are they choosing to be informal? There's a reason for that. One of our favorite exercises to do when we start working with governments and miners is we have a paper with 2 columns. On the one column, we say, okay, what are all the requirements to becoming formal? You know, requisite bank account, paperwork, all the rules and all the costs of becoming formal, compliance, everything. And what are all the requirements to becoming to not being formal? So what are the, you know, to being informal? And then we ask the government, if you were a miner, which would you choose? And then there's usually an awkward laugh, because obviously people would choose to be informal because that's what makes business sense. It's cheaper. There's no incentive to become formal. So we have to start moving the informal miners to the formal category. And how do you do that? You think about the incentives that will get them there. So what we try to do at PACT is really try to focus on the incentives. You know, they talk about carrots and sticks. We really focus on the carrots because that's what works. And so, you know, you will not be successful if you try to tell people what to do. You will be successful if you encourage them to do the right thing with a business case. So when you approach a mining community, it's really important to understand what is the existing infrastructure here. Yes, in terms of roads, electricity, you know, where are the villages, things like that. But who's in charge? And where are there minor associations? What are the rules? What are the formal rules? What are the informal rules? What do people need to become successful in this place? And the job for government is really to focus on helping people be successful. So it's moving from a position of trying to control a sector to a position of trying to facilitate business success. And that's a really important mindset shift that I think a lot of people need to do around the world, but you'll find it works. So what do they need to be successful in gold and to reduce harm to themselves and their community? Do they need mercury education? Do they need lower import tariffs on mercury-free processing equipment? Do they need the right price for mercury-free gold? And do they know there's alternatives to that? Have you asked them what they need? Do they need electricity? Do they need health insurance? You can be Santa Claus in the end, but you know it's really a process of consultation and shrewd business decisions to really help an area thrive. You should also think about what women miners need, and have you asked them? And how are they organizing themselves? And where are they meeting and when? And who's attending your sessions and your workshops? who is not and why. You know, if it's all highly educated men, think about who is not there and why, and ask them, and maybe be more proactive in your recruiting sessions. So one of the most important things, again, that government can do is moving from control to facilitation, to business facilitation. Do you have a clear, consistent business environment? Do the rules, are the rules stable for at least 2 years? One thing that we have a challenge with in some of the places we work, that the rules are constantly changing. People are constantly thinking of new ideas, and it's very hard for our international partners to want to stay because the rules are constantly changing. So they might love a place, they might love a country, they might love a product, but they need a predictable business environment. Are your offices appropriately located? Are they in existing trading hubs and export points? These are also really important. So one place that we're in, the export is in a major city, but the government office is in a tiny little village somewhere else. So can you align that government office to the export hub? That might seem obvious, but I need to say it. Do your policies promote mining and trading registration with progressive improvement expectations? Are your standards too high? And you might be confused by that, but you know, setting the standard too high is actually a problem because very few miners can actually attain it. A better approach is to set it lower and have progressive improvement expectations. And this, I have lots of ideas if you want to get in touch. We do this all the time at PACT. We worked in the African Great Lakes region, in East Africa. We have a long track record of success. Do your policies encourage self-organization and grouping of miners? So one big trend in this sector is to encourage miners to organize as a group. So instead of trying to chase several million people around, it's much easier to service them as cooperatives. My electricity is about to go out, so I'm gonna plug my computer in. So one big trend is encouraging grouping of miners. And that way you can deliver technical trainings, you can deliver formalization trainings, you can deliver a lot of, you can do a lot of more focused listening when you're working with groups with one person in charge and a clear hierarchy. And I want to talk about exports and imports for a moment. You know, I mentioned, you know, is your business environment predictable? And this is really important, again, because you want to make sure to keep the people who are currently invested and attract others. So are your visa fees low or moderate for business people? And are they in line with your neighbors? So for example, in Kenya, it cost me $50 US for a visa. In Tanzania, it cost me $250 for a visa every time I enter the country. You know, they share the same gem belt. And so it's really important that the two countries kind of come together with, from a business perspective to make sure that both are competitive in their business approaches and attracting foreign investors. And do you have huge custom duties for importing equipment for value addition? How much does it cost to import a facetron or a facet with the not only paying for it but bringing it in the country? Is a tax actually more than it's worth? These are key questions when you're thinking about the value addition ladder and the value addition agenda. Is, are your import policies working with you or are they working against you? And if you want to switch from, mercury to cleaner technologies, this is a question for you. If you want to start adding value to those gemstones, this is a question for you. Being really intentional about where you want to get and what kind of policies will help you get there from the mining, trading, and value addition perspectives. The last thing I want to talk about is reaching international markets. And I'll talk about our Moyo Gems program. But first I'll talk about the changing expectations of the international consumer. You probably have heard of the responsible sourcing agenda. What does this mean? About 10 years ago, there is a guidance put out by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It's called the OECD DDG, Due Diligence Guidelines. And they created like minimum expectations. So if you're going to call something responsible in any way, it needs to align with that. So in the chat, if someone can just paste the link to the OECD DDG, I'd be really appreciative. Or otherwise, I can do it after my presentation. The idea is you don't want to tolerate child labor. You don't want to tolerate conflict that is linked to mining. You don't want to contribute to corruption, things like that. So if you are in a conflicted place, like Mali, like Burkina Faso, like Central African Republic, you have a higher expectations put on you because there are some conflicts in those places. But if you are a place like Tanzania or Kenya, you won't necessarily have that high a burden to show that you're not a conflicted place. In essence, what the OECD DDG means is telling the story of your supply chain, that it meets this kind of bare minimum acceptability, and that you're improving it over time. And so I mention this because transparency is sweeping the field, no matter if your materials go for electronics, for renewable batteries, for Teslas and things like that, for gemstones, for really anything with international markets. The OECD DDG is the new international norm. It's really important that folks like you and others start to understand it and be able to speak that language. So I'll talk about Moyo. Moyo Gems, it's M-O-Y-O. Moyo Gems is a dream come true for me. Moyo means heart in Kiswahili and Shona. Kiswahili, being spoken in Tanzania and Kenya, and Shona being spoken in Zimbabwe. It also means life in Chinyanja, which is in Malawi, and Luganda in Uganda. And Moyo Gems was inspired by the female artisanal miners of Tanzania. And I met this group about almost 10 years ago, was really impressed by their leadership, the Tanzanian Women Miners Association, TAWOMA, Tanzanian Women Miners Association. Moyo is an example of collaboration between African leadership organizations and local entrepreneurs and the international community. So TAWOMA is a miners association. They have 3,000 lady miners across Tanzania. They provide the miners, and they provide the access to the miners. PACT is an international NGO, nonprofit organization. We provide kind of a connection between the miners and the traders and implement the standards that international community expects. We also have local brokers who are part of the system, who are nominated by the women miners in that area. And we have a Tanzanian exporter. And the government of Tanzania has really leaned in to help us be successful. So they've really worked with us on ensuring that it's possible for the miners to become formal in that place. So for example, a lot of the miners in Tanzania that in this area were mining on someone else's concession. And so they didn't have the license in their name. They had it was in somebody else's name, but they had permission to be there. And so what we did was work with the government of Tanzania to help formalize these individuals, to put them on group licenses. So in Tanzania, you can have a group license, and it's the exact same fee as an individual license. So for example, if I wanted to be the boss, I could have everybody be on my license, my individual license. Or if me and some villagers wanted to band together, we could get a license as a group and apply that way. And they're the same cost. So it makes formalization accessible to everyone. And everybody who's part of Moyo is a member of Tawoma. They've also shown that they're on a group license or an individual license. They've taken occupational health and safety training that PACT has provided. And they agreed to some rules around trading. Well, I'm happy to tell you that we launched about 2 years ago, and we've been able to continue despite COVID. So despite international trade being stopped, because we have such strong in-country partners, the Women Miners Association, the exporters, the brokers, and PACT Tanzania, they've been able to keep buying going despite COVID, which is pretty remarkable. We have 400 miners, 60% are women. We've allowed men in because, for lots of reasons, I can discuss that later, but 60% are women. And 95% of the export value goes to these miners. I'll say that again. 95% of the export value of the gemstones goes to the person who mined it. And that's remarkable. It's usually a tiny fraction of that, typically 5, 10, 15% at most goes to that miner. But in Moyo, it's 95%. So you can see why there's a business case for people to want to join Moyo, because it can be a windfall. The brokers are excited to be part of it because they get 5% of that transaction. They show up for a few days, make several months worth of income. They're very happy. The government's very happy with us because we're encouraging formalization. We're promoting Tanzania and the stories of the women miners. And the miners are so excited. And I want to tell you, I'll post the link in the chat, but in September, we were in British Vogue magazine. And they actually named one of the miners that we work with, her name's Prisha. They actually named Prisha in British Vogue. Can you imagine? This woman who lives 8 hours from the capital city has her name in one of the most luxurious magazines in the world. So I'll be getting a copy for her. I asked my colleagues in the UK to get me 5 copies so I could give it to the Women's Leadership Organization and different people, government representatives, things like that. I mentioned the example because these challenges seem big, but with the right partners and the right approach, really anything is possible. So Moyo was really centered on the stories of these lady miners, on transparency, on traceability. So we are we're really focusing on value addition in Tanzania through transparency. That's something that anybody can do. We just have led the way. And Moyo also has inspired other initiatives like Virtue Gem. Virtue is Zambian. It's expanding to Malawi. If somebody could put the link in the chat. I want to just invite everyone, if you want to learn more about Moyo, you can go to moyogems.com. You can follow us on Instagram. It's at Moyo Gems. And you can see some of the beautiful stones that are for sale in international markets. And we look forward to expanding. So thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Christina, for that insightful presentation, which is an empirical one from what PAC is doing, especially in Tanzania. And if I if I have some takeaways, it will be how to approach the whole change by first of all engaging the communities. And when we get there, we have to present ourselves as facilitators, not controllers. So this goes especially to agencies. And also ask the fundamental questions: why do people choose to be formal? Why do they choose to be informal? If we can get that those answered, then we have the link to what we have for a change. I was also happy to hear that we should move away from being the controlling agent. Yes. And also on policies, you touched on a lot. And so we must just encourage the groupings of the small scale miners, because there is always power in numbers. And that was very insightful. You touch on transparency, which is key, and also collaboration, and also having an innovative licensing regime, because it may not apply to all. So thank you very, very much. So I would like to apologize. I called on you. It was not your turn, because Dr. Amina had a slight technical connecting issue. So I just jumped over to put you across so that after you, she would come. So thank you for being ever ready. And I'm happy that I mentioned your name rightly. The next on our agenda will be Dr. Amina. Dr. Amina is a gold miner herself and the team lead of the Women in Mining in Ghana. She is going to just give us a few of the challenges from her own experience that women in mining face, or the opportunities that exist, especially in the AMN sector. I've been assured that Dr. Amina is now with us online. And so I would invite Dr. Amina, or Amina Tahiru, to join us and give us the next dish. Thank you very much, Dr. Amina. Hello?
Amina, is that wrong? Amina?
Yeah, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Yes, I just heard you. I heard you, so I think you
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right,
Yes, we
right,
can.
right. Okay, so thank you so much. My name is Amina from Minatari from Ghana. I am a leader, as you rightly said, and
Dr. Amina, we can't, it's not consistent. Please, can you, it's not consistent. I can no longer hear you.
I see which, of course, hello, can you hear me? Hello? I guess I'm having a problem with the connection. Hello?
Yeah, we can see you and we can't hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now? Is it okay now?
Yeah, I can hear you. It's okay, we can hear you now. Hello?
Okay, right. So let me straight to the point. The challenges that women faces in the ASM sector, first of all, are the cultural norms, and also identifying a very good mineable lands in the ASM sector, because it's like, trying to break through the glass ceiling with our male counterparts here in Ghana. But thankfully, with the help of the Minerals Commission and all the new mining policies that are now in place, things are gradually changing, but we still have a lot to do when it comes to the cultural norms. For example, not too long ago, I heard somebody asking me as a woman, why should I be holding a gun? Or why should I license a gun in my name and not in my husband's name? And these are some of the challenges that we continue to face in our day-to-day activities. But nonetheless, we are trying to break through. So I think that at this point, I would like to touch on the opportunities, because the opportunities are more interesting to me than the challenges, because whatever we do, there will be some challenges in the mining sector. It is not going to be one day's job. It's a gradual process that we need to work on it to eliminate it. But the opportunities are enormous, and that is what I would like everybody to take away. First of all, as a miner and as a in the mining industry, you are often looked down upon the fact that you are a woman. And for me, I see that as an opportunity. I see that, to be a plus for me. Somebody asked me a while ago, don't I get attacked? And I said, who is going to attack me? Because first of all, they don't see me as somebody who is even carrying any valuable thing on me. So nobody is interested in me. And that is a plus for me. And when you go into the mining industry as a woman and you put your heart and soul into it, I think it is a business that we don't look back and say, I have regretted being in it. And now with all the right policies, I think that governments are trying to appreciate, the contributions that women are making in the mining industry. And for me, if we continue on that path, I think that it is going to really, really improve on the livelihood of the African women, especially when it comes to our income generation. So for me, I think that as a woman in mining, we have a lot to do to change the perception of you being a woman, you can't be on the field, you being a woman, you can't be on a machine. All of that have changed like 20 years ago since I was in, I first joined the mining industry, and it continues to change and improve. So the opportunities, that I find in the ASM sector is that women often pass on the baton to others, to take up. Even when we bow out and say, I'm done, you pass it on to others, to continue the good work that you have done. And so those are the opportunities that I find. And also, I was listening to Christina's presentation. I think when we group ourselves as organization, it often benefits us more than operating as individuals, because the individual comes with its challenges. You have documentations to deal with, you have cultural issues to deal with, and then you have security issues as well. But then when you come as a group, as a cooperative, all of these challenges are often, distributed amongst yourselves, and then you find that, you benefit more rather than just operating as an individual operator. So I think that is what I have to contribute.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amina Tahiru. That was very short and sweet and straight on to the point. And if I am taking anything home, I think you said the challenges are with especially the regulatory regime or the regulators, and also the cultural challenges that project some amount of stereotypical look. But beyond that, you said that opportunities are enormous. The primary amongst the opportunities is the generation of income to improve livelihood. And that is what we are all living for in this lifetime. So that is paramount. And you also pointed out that because of that great opportunity to change the lives of women across the continent, there is the opportunity for more women to come on board. So you are invariably encouraging more women to enter the ASM space. But you also hinged on what Christina Villegas has also said earlier on, that policies must encourage the grouping of the miners in cooperatives. And you pointed out also that there is power in the numbers when the miners come together, which is part of formalizing them. So thank you very much for that insightful, short and sweet presentation. With that said, we'll move on straight to our next speaker, who will be talking to us also about the challenges and opportunities in the formalization process and how to scale it up, scale the formalization process up from an empirical experience in Namibia to a continental level in Africa. She is the person of let me get back to the name quickly. She is, I want to get this name excellent. I want to get this name right. She is Misozi Sibeso, and I hope I've pronounced your name well. Misozi Sibeso from Namibia. She is a geologist by training and has about 15 years of experience in managing the ASM sector. She has been assigned special roles in the regulation of ASM. And so I would hand over to Misozi, if you're online. Misozi, please take over.
Can you hear me? Excuse me just a second. This is from MADI Secretariat. Before proceeding with Mrs. Misozi, Frank, our chairman, did you wanted to intervene quickly?
I just let it go. I just want to remind our speakers that time is not so we have to have time for answering questions.
Okay. Okay, Misozi, go on, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I'll just, I would like to do a sound check. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can.
Yes,
right.
yes, we can hear you, Misozi.
All right. Thank you very much. To start off, I want to say congratulations. It's not very easy to pronounce my name for most people, but you really tried. I give you an 8 out of 10.
Thank you very much. I really wanted to get it right on my own, but thank you. I will use your assistance to get that 10 over 10.
All right. So as I have been introduced, I'm presenting this afternoon the challenges and opportunities for formalization of the ASM. And I'll be sharing our Namibian experience in the hope that those with similar ASM industries can also learn, and we can learn from each other. In the interest of time, I'll get right into the presentation of the day. It has already been, the speakers before me have already alluded to the importance of the ASM sector. So I'm not going to go into that. What I want to go to is maybe introduce briefly our statistics in terms of ASM in Namibia. We have approximately 8,000 people working directly in the ASM sector. And it might sound to some of you like a small, insignificant number, but for a country with a population of 2.5 million, that is a significant number, and we are committed to assisting them to achieve productivity and also to operate within the confines of the laws that are applicable in their space. In terms of legalization, we have approximately 750 small-scale miners with mineral rights, and about 5 to 10 ASM work under one mineral right. The other thing that I want to tell you about our small-scale mining industry in Namibia is that 80% of the ASM exploit gemstones, and the other 20% exploit industrial minerals, dimension stone, and to a limited extent, base and rare metals. And for that reason, our ASM industry is synonymous with the gemstone industry. It is estimated that approximately $8 million is derived from the gemstone industry, which makes up 80% of our ASM industry. Namibia is a source of a variety of gemstones. We have tourmaline, we have aquamarine, we have garnets, varieties of garnets, we have amethyst, we have pitesite, amazonite, smithsonite, just to name a few. But we do have quite a variety of gemstones. Our markets are mostly South Africa, China, United States of America, Germany, and Sweden. And trade happens mostly through brokers, well-known brokers in the country who are few. So that is one of the challenges I'm going to mention when I get to that part. We are talking about formalization this afternoon. I just want to indicate the definition that I'm working with, because from the other presenters, I see that maybe we are working with different definitions. And this afternoon, I'm talking about formalization as a process that ensures that the ASM actors are licensed and organized in representative entities that represent their needs, and that policies are implemented and monitored and enforced, and that the ASM actors receive technical, administrative, and financial support that empowers them to adhere to requirements prescribed by the national regulations. So the benefits of formalizations are many, and overarching that is improved profitability, efficient and sustainable operations, as well as minimized environmental degradation. Those are some of the benefits of formalization. And formalization in its nature has different dimensions. We can talk of the legal dimension, institutional dimension, pedagogical, environmental, socio-economic, and also financial dimension. And each of those dimensions come with its own challenges. I mean, I could pick any one of the dimensions. The legal dimension, for instance, we have many challenges. The challenges with getting mining titles, challenges of meeting rehabilitation and mine closure requirements, challenges of getting environmental impact assessments. And that is only one dimension of legal. I could go to the socio-economic dimension, and there are many challenges also in that dimension. And the others have also mentioned some of the challenges that are there. I would like to maybe mention a few also from the institutional dimension. And we have challenges there of services. How close are the services to the people who actually need them? Are the offices decentralized? And the responsibilities of the various institutions that support the ASM industry. Sometimes we work in a disjointed way. You'll find that different institutions providing support to this one industry do not even consult each other, and that results in not achieving the best results and not putting to good use the limited resources in a most efficient way. So I could go on with the challenges. There are many, but in the interest of time, I would like to move on to the opportunities, just to share what opportunities are there in formalizing ASM. And I also draw examples from our Namibian experience. So the first opportunity that I'm presenting is context. Hello? Can you still hear me?
Please proceed. We can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
All right, thank you. There's a need for context-specific legal and policy frameworks for ASM. There is a need, like the Musotunia Declaration said, there is like it was said in the Musotunia Declaration, there is a need to distinguish between the different mining scales, clearly distinguish. There's a need for ASM to have exclusivity, to have access to land, to be able to explore and to extract, and also access to markets, and also access and also security of tenure.
Hello,
so in the Namibian situation, we have mineral rights. Okay, sorry, I'm hearing some interference in the background.
Yes, I also heard it, but you continue. It's temporary.
All right.
I don't know what it is, but we'll work on it in the background. We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. So in the Namibian context, we have mineral rights that are applicable only to ASM, and those are only open to Namibians to allow them to participate in this sector, which is highly important to the economy of our country. And these rights are not subjected to stringent requirements in the same way that the large-scale mining licenses are. The ASM licenses are also renewable for successive periods of time, and if compliance can be demonstrated, compliance to legal provisions, that is. And the licenses, the ASM licenses are exclusive, and I must report that we have a high degree of legalization because there are low barriers to legalize. One of the previous speakers mentioned that if you make legalization very difficult, then you may end up with ASM staying away and not even attempting to legalize their operations. So it's very important to make sure that there is fewer barriers to legalization as possible. We also have a Mineral Ancillary Rights Commission, which is a commission that was put in place to resolve conflict. And by this, I'm referring mostly to land access disputes that sometimes come up between mineral right holders and the land owners. So those are all good provisions that we have in the law. And I must indicate also that currently we are in the process of reviewing our laws. Some 2 years ago, IGF did a mining policy framework assessment of our laws. So some of you who are IGF member states may actually know what that is about, or you may have had also the same process done for your laws. So the assessment evaluates the relevant national, regional, and international laws and policies with respect to 6 themes, with ASM being one of them. So the recommendations that were made in that assessments concerning the ASM industry of Namibia are currently being considered during this process of review that we are going through. So I encourage those member states, IGF member states, who have not done this and who have the need to look at their laws to see how effective they are in terms of international best practice, to please go through the same process to identify gaps that might exist in your laws. The other another area of opportunity that I would like to talk about this afternoon is integration of ASM into the developmental agenda. I'm glad that our government, the Namibian government, has adopted a strategy, a growth at home strategy, whose aim is really to emphasize industrialization, manufacturing, and value addition. And the colored gemstone, which I already said is synonymous in our context with the ASM industry, because ASM, 80% of the ASM exploits gemstone. We developed a strategy, a colored gemstone strategy, which is outlining, or which is basically providing a roadmap for the various activities which we want to conduct in order to develop this gemstone value chain. For this strategy basically identified 5 areas, intervention areas that need to be looked at. It's the primary production and input supply, and that is where, as a Ministry of Mines and Energy, that is one of the core areas in which we pour in, and we are really making efforts to develop that intervention area. There's also the transformation and technology. That is another key area. The speakers before me mentioned that as well. There is the product distribution and trade. The presentation on PACT also mentioned that. There is a service delivery as well as a business environment. Those are all areas that need to be looked at in order to develop this gemstone value chain and to provide quality services to the ASM. The Namibian government is also advocating for value addition before export. And in that regard, we have set up 3 gemstone training centers in order to build capacity for local beneficiation. The quality is still not yet there, but I'm very glad that we have taken this step and that we can only go forward from here. There's also another area of opportunity. It's the support to miners. And in that regard, I want to share an experience that we have had in terms of supporting miners. We are currently working with UNDP as partners to provide PPE to small-scale miners so that they can operate in a safe environment. We are also developing safety and health guidelines and training them in the same so that they can operate in a safe environment. Again, leveraging on our partnerships, we are working together with GIZ to implement some 2 projects that I would like to highlight this afternoon. There is the Mindstone project. You can Google it later. These are really branding efforts that we are trying to make in order to improve the image of the ASM industry. So we are just differentiating between the different products that we have, ASM products that we have available in the country, from your rough gemstones to those that have just been marginally value added, to the more high-end cuts and those jewelry lines. So all of that is to try to improve the image of the ASM industry. Another project is the Geopark project, which is aiming to link the ASM industry and the tourism industry. With this project, the idea is to bring tourists to the areas where the ASM work, and to actually let them have an experience or live the experience of being an ASM. And by that, we are hoping to stimulate the demand for our gemstones. I'm a bit pressed for time now. Another area of opportunity is the inclusive finance. As a government, previously we had a mineral development fund which offered soft loans to ASM, and those loans were payable over long periods of time at very low interest rates. Currently, this fund is struggling a bit, but we are looking at ways to resuscitate it so that we can provide this much needed service to ASM. As all the other speakers before me mentioned, inclusive finance is really an issue for small scale miners who cannot afford to secure funding from financial institutions. Another area that I would like to talk about is the protection of the environment. Again, I would like to share an experience of what we are doing in this regard. We are together with UNDP as our partners conducting collective environmental impact assessments for small-scale miners. This is because they are required by law, by the Environmental Management Act, to conduct environmental impact assessments and to actually get clearance, environmental clearance, before they can register their mineral rights. But unfortunately, the costs that are related to conducting these environmental impact assessments are simply too high for most small-scale miners. And that's why we have come in as a government to help them to conduct a collective, like for the whole area that we know, for a hotspot where we know many small-scale miners are working. We do a clearance of the whole area in order to ease the process of registration of their mineral rights. Another area is development minerals. In that area, the government, as a government, we are implementing a project on developing mining inputs and services database, which will be made available to SMEs. The project is really about identifying and recording all physical inputs and services that are needed in the mining industry. This is done with a view to provide the local entrepreneurs full access to information on the mining industry's input requirements. And this is meant to trigger business development, especially in the SME sector. I can think of examples of gypsum, for instance, which is used in cement manufacturing. And ASM may not have the capital or the expertise to directly get involved in the cement industry, but they can provide the inputs, they can provide the gypsum, which is one of the inputs needed in the process. I can also think of another example of the steel industry. Again, many ASM may not be able to get involved in steel manufacturing because of the costs that are involved, but they can provide the lime which is needed, which is one of the inputs in steel production. So that is what we are trying to stimulate with this project that we are doing on mining inputs, is to create those linkages. The last one I'm going to talk about is gender mainstreaming. Only about 10% of the ASM are women in this country, but we still want to take care of them. Therefore, the Women in Mining Association of Namibia, the association which is taking care of the interests, and which is an advocacy group to speak about which speaks about the rights and the conditions of women in the mining sector, has decided to create an ASM chapter. So we have reached out to the small scale, to the ASM. I have been using the terms interchangeably because in Namibia, we mostly use the term small scale miners. So we have reached out to the women small scale miners to also be part of the Women in Mining Association, so that they can benefit from the services that are being offered by the association, such as mentorship and coaching, such as networking opportunities, and many other services that as an association we offer. I'm part of the EXCO, of the Women in Mining Association as well. So in summary, what I have been talking about, what we need to do to professionalize ASM is to put in place the right laws, the laws that are realistic, that are context specific, and that are actually implementable. And apart from that, we need data. We need good data management. ASM needs to know where the deposits are, what is out there, how can they mine it, who can they sell it to, all of that services that we can provide to them in order to professionalize this industry. And we need to facilitate implementation of shared visions and initiatives. There are many shared vision, there are many initiatives out there. We have the Africa Mining Vision, we have the Musi Otunya, and many of them. But the experience has been that we come back from developing these frameworks and initiatives, and we put them aside and do our own thing. And yet, this is an opportunity for us to work together on these shared goals and to share experiences, and also to facilitate and build capacity for the implementation of these initiatives. We need to exploit the sector's linkages to broader developmental agenda. I have mentioned our project on inputs and services. That's one good example, but we need to really be deliberate about exploiting the linkages that exist. I have mentioned many things. Maybe let me mention one more, is the environmental and health issues that are prevalent in ASM. If we can take care of those issues are what is causing the negative image that ASM is associated with. If we can take care of those, we have better chances of formalizing and even professionalizing this industry. I would like to end with a quote from an unknown author, which says, "The best time to start was yesterday, and the next best time is now." So we have spoken about a lot of things from this presentation and those of previous speakers. We need to stop talking and start implementing some of the things that we have been learning and have been agreeing upon. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much, Madam. I will redeem myself by calling you now Misozi Siveso. I think I got it right this time. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, for my takeaways, I think you also underscore the fact that we need a legal framework in each quarters of the continent that is context specific, and that will help us even generate data, and also be able to define the small scale mining, the differences between them. You also underscore the fact that if the legal framework is too stringent, it will hinder the formalization process. And you have encouraged us to look at the IGF membership and engage it, and also we have to integrate the ASM sector into a national development agenda that Namibia has already started, so that we look at the value addition chain properly. I just would like to inform you that His Excellency MADI from Kenya has requested that you give you supply further information on the gemstone, on the colored gemstone, so that we share, because this is a platform for sharing. You also touched on the work that you're doing with UNDP and GIZ, excellent work. And what I want to just chip in is that the idea for soft loan for the ASM is excellent because they need finance. But I come from Ghana, and the Minerals Commission tried it years ago, and there was a problem of getting the money back, because it was a fund that was supposed to generate itself. So I'm happy to hear that there is success on that topic in Namibia. So for a country that has 2.5 and 8,000 people are into ASM, and 80% of them are into gemstone, I think when it comes to gemstone, you are an authority. I would like to use this to thank you very much for the presentation. There is time for questions, and Dr. Mujeni will handle that. So I would thank you and go to the next speaker. Well, if we had had this conference last year, it would have been, physical, but technology has made it possible in the presence of COVID for us to actually have this conference and even engage more people across the globe. So technology is a superstructure. In the same vein, if we are talking about formalization of the ASM sector on the continent, technology will play a crucial role. So the next speaker will handle technology, but I would like to let Mr. Chairman, Dr. Frank Dixon Mujeni, introduce our next speaker for us. Over to you, Dr. Mujeni.
Thank you so much, Raymond. I think with the last speaker, there is no way of summarizing her presentation, but we are going to engage with the Namibia. Already, MADI is well represented. Two of our members of team members are from Namibia. So we need to use the Namibia case study to see how we can cascade and replicate, because everything from there is too sweet in the ears of everyone. Obviously, you mentioned that Her Excellency Majara had requested, actually specifically she requested for the colored gemstone strategy she wants to get, but we'll get more information that we'll share. The Mindstone project, the Geopark, all those for tourists. We are looking, in MADI, we're trying to look at linking minerals with tourism. So that is very important to hear from you. There are quite a lot that we can work on. In fact, one of the projects that we are developing with our, to be partners, the Sustainalytics based in Canada, is to look at social, to look at environment, social governance, look at social economic impact of SMEs in the region. We shall be looking at how do you collected some of those data, because you have very important data on inclusion, on environment, and so forth. So we'll definitely reach out to you through our partners, and thank you for that. Yeah, and thanks Raymond for introducing me to introduce Mr. Sharif. Sharif and I were involved in the Nigeria Mining Week. I looked at what he presented, and I thought it was very important to listen to him in this region. And I know there is a lot of technology. I can see that Dean Richardson from Australia, who is commenting on this chat room, is having some technology which is non-for-profit, but others, of course, the artisanal small-scale mining is a profit-making organization. Others will go, we can get, ASMs can be a charity, they will be supported, but we want to develop them and see how we can move. And there is a lot of technology along the value chain. It is technology for geological, it is technology for adding value, it is technology for processing and cutting. So appropriate technology has to have to be applied not only for excavation or mortuary, mortuary-free processing, but we need to look at extraction, as Her Excellency Majara talked about, extraction that doesn't create damages on minerals. And I know Dean Richardson on this platform again, you mentioned that in Australia you are not allowed to do blasting. But again, Australia is a developed country. We are looking at Africa, where we are trying to come in and bring this applied technology, or to appropriate technology, and appropriate technology must also be applied technology anyway. So we need to look at entire value chain, from extraction to the end of the value chain, processing and marketing. And the last speaker, Christina, talked about marketing, and we'll be exploring what they call ethical market. She talked about Vogue. And so this conference had the entire value chain talking about everything. We had Amina, my best friend, and I didn't introduce her, but she's someone who has been working for women in mining. Her experience is immense from what she's been doing as a woman in mining in a sector which is not only male-dominated, but also what I may say, non-African male-dominated, and she has penetrated that. One of our participants on this platform, Elizabeth from Uganda, the chair of the Women in Mining, will want to engage with you later on as a mentor. So those are some of the things coming through, but I wanted to bring in on Sharif, who will be giving us a presentation. We'll try to see if we can get a shared screen, see how his presentation. If we get challenges, we shall see how we go about it. So over to you, Sharif, to give us your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Can you hear me, first of all, just to make sure, a quick mic test?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Dr. Frank, for giving me this short introduction. And I'm very happy to be joining this webinar. And honestly, it's the first time for me to join the MADI conference. And it's very interesting for me because our industry or our business is a bit of a complement to what all the speakers have been saying. And this actually for me is very good because I don't want to feel that I'm going off topic. However, I would rather think of it as adding a bit of different flavor to the topic in terms of technology and to make the industry more accessible to the artisanal small scale miners. So without further ado, I will just start with the presentation. I will not display it, so forgive me if I don't keep constant eye contact with you because I have the presentation open on my laptop. So again, I would like to thank everybody on the conference. And I've been hearing a lot about formalization and legalization, and I do believe that this is just the start of actually putting the mining industry on track. And it's only complemented by the right technology. I've been looking at the comments also by Dean and the other people. So technology is a key factor in completing this whole equation. And I would like to give a bit of introduction about my company and what we do and how we operate in the business, because I do believe that at the end of the day, it's the added value that we give in terms of education and in terms of clean access to mining extraction is really something to look into. So my company is MineLab, and my name is Sharif Hosni. So I've been working with the company for around a year now as a business development manager. MineLab is a company that is under, let's say, a mother company called Codan, which is an Australian company. And MineLab has been in operation for more than 35 years. And more, let's say, not recently, but the last 20 years have been actually very active in Africa. Just last year, we have done around 300 million in terms of revenues, and 70% of that has been actually being coming from Africa. So it's very much in line with what everyone has been saying that, and I really like the quote in the beginning that Africa has what the world wants, and the world has what Africa wants. So it really shows, and also in our business, how much Africa is a major contributor to our business, because there is a lot of untapped potential still in the country. So we as a company have, our head office is based in Australia, and we have 3 hubs globally where we cater for all the different continents. So we have a hub in America, in Chicago. We have one in Ireland that's looking over Europe. And we have our hub, where I'm based, is in Dubai, in UAE, and it's looking over Middle East and Africa. And I will focus a little bit more on our hub because, and at the end, it's the same methodology that we do in all the different hubs. So we have a group and a team of business development managers and local service engineers who are looking over the African and Middle East region. And we spend around 80 to 90% of our time traveling to different countries around Africa. And in these travels, we focus most of the time on transferring our knowledge of metal detectors to the end users. And this is what our vision, our mission as a company is what we do. So Minelab manufactures metal detectors, and specifically for gold metal detectors. So we have two sub-branches within the company. We have one that's mostly focusing on gold extraction, gold metal detectors, and we have another one that's mostly going for coin and treasure. And this is mostly in the European market, the US market. However, in Africa, of course, we focus on the gold extraction. So very briefly, a metal detector, because when people hear the name of metal detector, maybe not a lot of people are familiar with it, but very briefly, so metal detector is composed of a control box, which has, let's say it's the brain, the battery, which is the power for the machine, and a search coil. So how the machine operates is basically the control box or the coil sends a signal through the ground and is then transmitted back again to the coil. And whenever there is a target underneath the coil, there is an audio signal that comes out from the metal detector to tell the user that there is something useful to dig for. And when I say gold, coin, and treasure, and all these things, so this basically implies that the detectors are able to be modified to detect for certain types of minerals. So you can actually differentiate and discriminate between gold, and it's ferrous and non-ferrous material, so corrosive and non-corrosive material. And this is basically very important for the users to be able to discriminate and to be able to dig for something that makes sense and not just dig whatever they want. So Minelab, as a vision for the company, Minelab believes that developing connections between the prospectors, the community, and the environment is what best represents the long-term vision for the company. And when I say prospecting, so basically the move of technology is a decision that small-scale miners are making every day. And we as a company work to make this change effective through the following things. So our technology is extremely easy to use. It's very portable, and it's it's a long-term machine to be used. So most of our machines come with 3-year guarantees. It comes with a low investment and high return. And when I say that, it's basically because, first of all, the machine is very efficient in terms of, like I mentioned, you only dig where you see that there is a reason to be digging. The machine is also scalable, so it's scalable from one person to a group of operations. So this falls in towards the community part. And this is something that is very important in terms of our operations in the field. So we spend, as I said, we spend 80% of our time traveling to the countries to educate the people on how to use and the benefits of using metal detectors over conventional old school methods of detecting. We provide this education through training centers. So we develop our local dealers in each country, and we give them the necessary tools, not only as a start for selling the products, but we really focus on long-term relationships. So we mostly push for after-sale services. So because we understand the mindset of African people, that they want to buy something today, they need to be sure that after 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, I will not say the machine is working perfectly, but there will always be spare parts for the machine. So they don't have to every time buy a new machine. They can just go to a service center, service the machine, and reuse it again. And it becomes a livelihood for them. So we understand that the machine for the end users is not, let's say, a profit-making machine. It's actually their livelihood. So they use the machine every day to buy food, to buy water, to let their children go to school. So we need to make sure that they have full-time access to their machine every day. So we spend a lot of time doing this kind of certifications and this kind of accredited service centers to make sure that when we are not there locally in the country, we have a local dealer to follow up on these machines that have been sold in the country. And we always intend to give market giveaways for the people to be usable in their community. We also understand that the use of metal detectors actually drives the growth for let's say we call it secondary jobs. So whenever there is a mining site that has been discovered through the use of machines, you will automatically find people opening gold souks. There was a mention of a gold souk before in one of the presentations. So all these gold souks is what we call complementary jobs. And this indirectly creates further job opportunities for the local people just by, introducing the gold or introducing the machines that we are using. Last is basically what is very important for the country, and not just for the people, but mostly for the country, is the environment. So we spend a lot of time with the end users. However, also we spend some time with the government entities to tell them and to teach them about the benefits of using metal detectors over the old school, or let's say the traditional ways. So our machines require no mercury, no cyanide, no bulk earth extraction methods, no chemicals, and most importantly, no use of water for washing. So all this, shifts and opens up the government's eyes of the use of using metal detectors over the traditional ways, because all this is directly impacting further generations that have been using and will continue to mine in the country. So all our products are designed and manufactured to comply with international quality. So one of the questions that are coming in is our products to be manufactured locally in African countries. So it's partially something that we have been doing. So our main operations, as I mentioned, is in Australia. And we have been working and partnering with dealers, local dealers, whenever there is a true requirement for local involvement in our products. So I would like to, let's say, finish my presentation with a case study that we did both in Sudan and Ethiopia. So Sudan is one of our biggest markets when I speak about Africa. Sudan started out around in 2010 when there was, actually it started out with a rush. So the gold has started being found, and this actually rush started with one of our machines. It's called the GPX. So as soon as this rush started to happen, the government started implementing and formalizing the artisanal mining sector. So they started implementing laws. So first of all, licensing, of course, that was something that was the first thing that happened. So when I say formalizing, it starts in different stages. So licensing was the first stage. Another thing, and this is to tackle the illegal ways of importation of the gold, because this is a major issue for the countries. So they started to involve the Central Bank of Sudan in the operation of gold mining, where they forced the Central Bank of Sudan to buy the gold that has been extracted locally with very reasonable prices, attractive prices for the gold miners. And in this, two things actually were achieved. So they really reduced the illegal exportation of gold. And at the same time, the country maintained hard currency. So when they buy the gold from the local people, they buy it with local currency, and they retain the gold, which is hard currency in a way. Our role in developing the market there was basically, at one point, we traveled more than 10, 15 times during a year to Sudan to educate the market on the use of our machines. We developed a local service center, and now it's one of the biggest local service centers that caters for around the region of East Africa. And again, it was a two-way development for the country, or let's say for Africa, and also for our company, because I mentioned before, 70% of our business is coming from this region. So as a company, we started to adjust our products to cater for the needs of the African people. And by doing so, we released a product that's called Gold Monster. In Arabic, it's Wahsh al-Dhahab. A lot of people will relate this, and they will know this, especially the Arabic-speaking people, because this product is specifically focused for the African people. It's extremely simple to use, and it's like a plug-and-play detector. So there is no, we understand the mindset of the people. They want something very simple and very durable. So even as a company, based in Australia, we listened to what the market was asking for, and we automatically adjusted our products to cater for the needs of the market. Similarly, in Ethiopia, we are doing something similar to the localization of our product. So we are working with a local dealer there to have a local assembly line for our machines. This will enable him, to ease up on the custom requirements, to have better access for certifications. So we as a company also understand the needs, and we are more than happy to speak with people to understand if there is really a business need for us to localize assembly of our machines. We can consider something like this, and we are more than happy to support the local countries in developing their business, and at the same time they are educating the people. And this is what I really want to stress on. Education is key, because when people understand the benefits of investing something now and the return is 4 or 5 months of their investment, they will really understand that this is a profitable business for them. I don't want to speak a lot. I understand that there has been, quite some delay on our talks, but to conclude is that we are been there for, as I mentioned, 35 years. We are more than happy to grow the business with Africa. Currently, we are having around 95% market share of the African market, and we really see the potential still. It is untapped. When I say 95%, we understand that it's still untapped. And we are more than happy to support any local entities, government being local dealers, who are really willing to put the effort in growing the business in their country. So thank you very much, and this has been my presentation.
Okay. Thank you so much. And Raymond, are you going to have any questions coming in? But thanks, Sharif, for that. Let me just first, as we have running out of time, let me see if we can have some few questions answered. Elizabeth Biarugaba is asking Vincent, and I think Vincent is still with us, if the government of Uganda can strap tax on these machines. Vincent, are you still with us? Could you answer that question before I come to another one?
Yes, Frank, I'm still here. Actually, as we speak now, all inputs into mine development and exploration in Uganda are tax exempt. So yes, taxes on those equipments can be waived.
Okay. George Makateto, I think your question was answered. I'll give you a chance to say something if you want. My brother from Kenya, he was asking Sharif whether the machines can be assembled in Africa. George, do you want to say something, or Sharif can answer? George, I'm happy to see you, industrialist.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Frank, for the invite. I've been here throughout. I think he answered it very well, and maybe you can follow up with him. It will be important, given that the work he's trying to do in Ethiopia. And thank you very much, MADI, for organizing this. I'm very much enriched. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks, George. The reason I actually invited Sharif, I've been working on a private conversation on partnership between MineLab and MADI, is because unfortunately, we didn't see his presentation, and we'll share it with you when we get it. I saw that they had a huge footprint in Africa, except in Uganda and I think South Sudan or something. But even some of the areas in East Africa, rather, is still scanty. This is where they have a number of partnerships. But as you've heard, is more on technological transfer. They are not just like coming to do selling and so forth, imparting technology to our young people to do things by themselves. So we want to thank Sharif. Patrick Odiego, is Patrick Odiego still with us? He asked a question, why is Nigeria not included? Is Patrick still with us? I can give you a chance to show yourself. Patrick Odiego from Nigeria. He asked the question, why Nigeria is not involved. Nigeria is included, and I know that Nigeria has got a lot of artisanal small-scale miners, and they all need to be supported. There are more of artisan small-scale mining than actually big mining companies. And you also asked the question, can AU support that process? I always say that there are a lot of strategies that AU has put there, but they are not being implemented. We had, I don't want to compete with Ray in pronouncing Misinzo, but I think Minsozi, Sibeso, okay, Minsozi, because I wanted to get 9%, 9 out of 10. She mentioned about she mentioned about Africa Mining Vision, but when you look at Abuja Treaty and others, they really talk about value addition, industrialization. This is mineral resources should feed into industrialization. Like I said, we need to get best practices from Namibia. I know it is catering for 2.5 million people and 2,000 SMEs, artisan and small-scale mining, most of who are 80% in Gemstone, but I think there is a lot of reach of best practices that we need to get from there. She also mentioned the Mosiatunya Declaration, which was the conference in Zambia, in Livingstone. I think it was 2017. So there are a lot of strategies that African partnerships have put out there. We need to work on them. I have Isabel, I don't know whether she's still with us. She talked about Eastern DRC being highly risky, but highly profitable. MADI is wanting to look at how do we de-risk that region. We actually targeting to work with ICGR, the International Conference of Great Lakes region, which is catering for almost 10 countries of the Great Lakes region that are bordering DRC. DRC is bordered with 9 mineral-rich countries, but the Great Lakes region is actually has a membership of more than 15 countries or so. So we need to work with them. They're implementing the European due diligence, the OECD due diligence, but we also want to link it with African mineral governance framework. So we'll be working on that. Christina has left us. I wanted her to talk about how do we explore ethical markets. And I want to pass on to my colleague Ray if there are questions that he has picked up so that we can answer them before we make any conclusion, or if there are other questions that have just come in. Ray?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Dr. Frank Mujeni. I would just like to point to Patrick's question about Nigeria, that ASM2 included a lot of the information from Nigeria. We talked about the concept they are developing and also compared it to what is being done in Ethiopia. So this is ASM2, and we just moved on. So Nigeria was included in ASM1. Beside that, I would just like to thank a few people who have stayed on to this end, but also to the MADI management team, to our CEO, Nancy Awori, who has put all this together from the background, and also to thank Vanessa and also Irene for what they are doing on behalf of the program with the social media. I also like to thank Yvonne Mafowa Anokwa, who has stayed on till now from the Geological Survey Authority of Ghana. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for all the speakers. I thank you very much. This has been one of the most successful e-conferences MADI has had. Thank you, Patrick Odiego, for your question. Thank you for joining us, Nuria Ali. Thank you, Nabasa Jocelyn. I can't mention all of you, but I am grateful on behalf of MADI to thank you for participating with the quality you have done. With this, I would just hand over back to you, Dr. Mujeni, for the closing remarks.
Thank you. I'm going to say a few things. If my CEO doesn't mind, I'll let her close the meeting. If I have hijacked you, I'm very sorry, because Ray, guys, we want to let the lady CEO of MADI close. But before we close, with bringing in our CEO to make closing remarks and close the meeting officially, let me thank the following. First is my team, which has put this together. Raymond and your team, thank you so much. People have been working behind the scene. Thanks for making this happen. MADI is pushing levels to go into the next level trying to implement and have real make a difference. And we heard from this meeting, and our colleague from Namibia said, we've talked too much, and I did allude to that. So we need to really go into implementation. So thank you so much. And these conferences are helping us to draw what should we do. We need Sharif to bring those technology. We need Dean Richardson to bring his technology. We need Christina to bring the marketing information that we have. We need Her Excellency Majara with all those experience. We need training, we need courses. And I want to mention at this moment that MADI, for the next phase of working, we are going to be starting on training courses, capacity building for both artisanal small-scale mining, for legislators, for policymakers, for everybody who is involved in the mineral resource value chain. I want to thank our board members who've been with us. Dr. Amani Asfo, who has been standing with us, been a speaker of almost all our conferences and continue to give us that support, and also to welcome her and congratulate her upon the election as the incoming or interim chair of the African Business Council, which is a policy organ, a high policy organ of African Continental Free Trade Area, and her involvement in Sekuku, which also is going to be very instrumental for Africa, MADI, to see how we make sure that we can reach out all African countries, identify high quality products that can go onto that, the so-called, the kind of, not the so-called, the kind of the Alibaba of this world, but an African product. And we know we have a lot of African products. They make a lot of meaning, and we need to really make use of the Sekuku when it starts operational. For those who are asking about Sekuku, it's actually on African Union website, some information on when it was launched. So if you can, I think it was shared, the link was shared during our chat room. So I think our colleagues will post it on our website for those who want to know. I also want to thank Samuel Agbotabo. He was with us, and I saw Dr. Joshua Mtambi and others. If I have not seen you as one of our members of the board, thank you. I want to thank our advisors. MADI, we have a team of advisors, Tim Dobush from Canada, I think he was with us. We had Joe Kukuza from Australia, and Professor John Luden from CBE from UK. Thanks for participating in this meeting. I want to thank my fellow colleagues, Mr. Frank Balestra of AB Minerals. He has been participating in this meeting, and all those whom I cannot mention one by one. George Makateto, I have worked with you on industrialization for Africa, so I know we want to push this agenda forward. Thanks, Amina, for being part of us, and all of you, and particularly our presenters who have made this event successful. Thank you so much. For the next events, please stay tuned on our social media, on our website, and our team will be coming back to you to tell you when we'll come back to present, to host any other event. But I want to mention at this time that MADI will be having 2 signature events every year. We know there is Indaba in South Africa. We know there is PDAC in Canada. We know there is Africa Down Under in Australia. We know that there is UK and other high-level events investing in Africa. Similarly, MADI will be having 2 signature events every year. One of them is MADI Madini. MADI Madini. Madini is a Swahili, and I think even in Arabic, Madini means mineral resources. So we'll have a MADI Madini Baraza or conference every in the second quarter of the next year. MADI Madini will be a mineral wealth conference and exhibition that will bring all stakeholders in Africa to meet, particularly Africans working in the mineral resource sector. We shall be having that every year. It's MADI Madini. It's our label. It's our brand to move mineral resource Africa for Africa, but also partnering with the rest of the world. Then towards the end of the year, we'll have Investing in Africa diaspora event. It will either be a summit or a forum. We will find a way at the level at which it will be. And in between, we'll be also having an international jewelry and gemstone convention every year. So those will be three signature events, one focusing on artisanal small-scale mining, but also looking mainly on jewelry and artisanal products that come from minerals, mainly on jewelry and gemstone. And then on the other side, we shall have to attract investment. We're looking for diaspora investment coming into Africa. We want to work with other diaspora means everybody. We have a cross section of diaspora living in outside Africa. We have Indians, Asians, and so forth of African origin. We have Africans of African origin. So everybody who wants to come back to Africa and invest in the mineral resource sector will be putting that out for Africa diaspora. But early in the year, we shall have one big one, MADI Madini Baraza or conference that will be posted, as you will see. So with those announcements and comments and recommendations, let me switch over and invite our CEO, Madam Nancy Awori, to say a few words and close the meeting. Thank you so much.
A quick one before Madam comes in. Madam, may I indulge you? I almost forgot the one person who did the technical things in the background to make this possible, in the person of Boyan V. Vojinovic. He is our partnership director who assisted in making this program possible via the internet. Without him, we wouldn't have been successful. And also my boss, the president of women of the Association of Women in Mining Africa. I would also like to just thank you for joining us and staying all this while. I will cede to you, Madam, now. Sorry for the interjection.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for steering this meeting from the beginning. And thank you, Raymond. I just want to add my voice to what our chairman has already stated, to thank really our presenters today who have made this event successful. We thank you very much. Thank you so much, the participants who have stayed with us up to this time. Without you, this conference wouldn't be as successful as it has been. So thank you very much for always attending our activities and following up on the website to see the different activities that we are running. So we want to thank you so much. I also want to take this opportunity to thank our international advisors. They're always with us in every meeting that we organize. So thank you very much, John, Joe, and Tim. Thank you for attending all the meetings that we organize, and thank you for supporting MADI and giving advice to our board chairperson. So I want to thank you in a special way. I want to also thank our board members who have attended this meeting today. Some of them, Dr. Asfa has been a presenter. I also want to thank you so much. And finally, I want to thank my team, the management team of MADI. You have worked tirelessly to make sure that this conference is successful. So I want to thank you in a special way. Thank you, Raymond. Thank you, Boyan, Mary, Irene, Vanessa, Lydia. I don't want to leave anyone out. Everybody, thank you very much. And Nelson, yes, Nelson and Ria, I thank you very much. And finally, I want to thank Mr. Chairman for always standing with the management team and giving us the guidance that we need. In addition to the activities that Mr. Chairman has highlighted that will be running next year, MADI is also in the process of running training activities in different areas, including minerals policy, legal and regulatory regime. So please check our websites and be part of those training, because we are trying to get solutions for Africa to ensure that we have responsible mining, and investment in the mineral sector. So some of those solutions include capacity building, training. So when we run those trainings and we call upon you, please attend the training. So I want to thank you once again, and I declare the meeting closed. We'll see you next time in our event, the next event. Thank you very much.
Yeah, let me recognize as you close our other board member, Gilbert Jema, whom I have had missed out. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, and see you next time.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.
See you next time. Bye.
Thank you.